We are on the air.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Kennebunkport Growth Planning Committee meeting of April 2nd, 2019. We're sorry for our delay here. We had to find a way of getting one of our presenters hooked up. Paul Hogan is reaching us through Skype, and we wanted to make sure that he could be heard and everything by you. So anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. Before we get started, let's do our introductions of our committee.
Warner Gilliam.
Mike Corsi.
And Jim Fitzgerald.
Barbara Barwise.
And Paul Hogan, who is on, I don't know if you could hear him, but there he was. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for March 5th, 2019. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion.
Thank you. You can second.
Oh, I'm not.
Yes, you are tonight.
Oh, okay, I second.
Thank you. Are there any corrections, deletions, additions? Nothing? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed. Okay. Any comments from, we have no guests this evening, but have we received any mail or any news from other committees, board representatives?
None at this point.
Okay. Our third item on the agenda is the comprehensive plan update process. And it was very nice that Werner has distributed a draft of the RFP that we can take a look at to see whether or not we can find ourselves a comprehensive plan leader, right? Proposals for completing our comprehensive plan of 2022. Do you want to kind of
Sure.
start us off with that?
Yep, absolutely. So, did you see a copy of it, Paul?
Yeah.
The RFP?
I was just pulling it up again. It says draft RFP, right?
That's correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Got it.
So yeah, so what I've given you is the first draft copy of the RFP for our 2022 comprehensive plan, and so I've highlighted some specific areas where I'd like to get some more detail, within the document. But I'm very interested just to get hear feedback from you all and identify any changes that we may need. So as a basis for the document, overall I like Lewiston's RFP the best, in terms of its description and also its length. That it's important to get I think a fair amount of detail, but too much, and I think you're going to lose folks. And so it starts off with, and I'll just give you kind of the framework. It starts off with a little bit of an introduction, a description of the project area, which project areas is a kind of a short description of Kennebunkport, and then it goes into a scope of work. Then goes to project management and responsibilities, gives a project budget, a preliminary project schedule, and then we have on here a selection that talks a little bit about a selection committee, how that would work. I'm a little on the fence in terms of whether or not I want to have that in the RFP, but it was in Lewiston's plan, so I modified it as such and kept it in here. Response to request, and then some specifics as far as the fee statement. So for the project area, I pulled some general information from the town's website. I'd like to have a little bit more more discussion in there about the community, and so that's a particular piece that as you all look this over and read it, I'd like to to hear some feedback or some suggestions on the project area portion.
I have some.
Okay.
One's just a typo. After the Portland Biddeford Metropolitan Statistical Area, the town center, it says he.
Thanks.
So it's just a T
Yep.
missing there. And then just personal preference, the Dock Square area has a district of, can we just say shops, not souvenir shops? And the last sentence in that paragraph, Kennebunkport has a reputation as a summer haven and is one of the wealthiest communities in the state of Maine. We can
So
just,
forget the upper,
upper class, yeah,
Yeah.
they gotta go. And those were the only changes I had in that section.
Okay, yep.
Is there a reason to say, I mean, who are we trying to impress? Why do we have to say we're one of the wealthiest communities in the state?
Well, I mean, I think it helps at least in, kind of describing the overall, well, what it does, it describes really the overall valuation of the town, in that sense. I mean, I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. It's part of the description that's linked through the town's website. So, but I'm happy to entertain any modifications to that.
Part of my reaction, I must admit, was upper class. I sort of took the two of them together and said, ugh.
Well, in 1820, we were promoting that we were the second wealthiest town in the state of Maine. So,
Yep. Okay.
in 1820.
in 1820, yes. Times had changed.
Yeah, so I mean, personally, I'd like a little bit more in here.
And you want more?
I would like, I'd like a description for Goose Rocks in here.
Sure.
I would like, some description of, the rural area of town, farm and forest area. Those are areas that I just see that are lacking. And a statement about the village area as well in here. I don't like.
Maybe something about the diversity of the population, between year-rounders and those from away. The town swells to some size. It's really two towns.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Okay, we can produce that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Pretty easily.
Yep.
Yeah, so what I have just noted here, we have Goose Rocks Beach, the village area, the rural area. And then, as Paul mentioned, we'll say the population swing that we experience here in the summertime. I was just looking at a map earlier today that had us pegged as going from between 3,500 to over 10,000. Between the seasons.
Yeah.
So I'll probably use a number similar to that.
Yeah.
To describe that.
One thing that I've noticed, and I guess it applies to growth planning, is that a lot of newer residents to town are retirement age people that they're retiring here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
It's still an aging population, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky paragraph because it wants to, it doesn't want to be massive, but it wants to have a lot of information in it. As far as, what is it that you want as right out of the chute, what do you want this consultant who's potentially bidding on this project to know
To know,
about,
yeah.
about Kennebunkport? Okay, all right, so
Maybe we could pull a few things, from our survey that we just completed about the town.
yeah, or the other
couple
thing, we
things that are important, that
we
type
could
of
pull
thing.
some of the the descriptions from from the current plan for some of these areas.
Sure,
But yeah, I think I agree, some of the survey pieces would be good to put in here.
No, I mean, it's kind of where the emphasis is gonna change a little bit in the comp plan anyway.
Yep.
So we might as well kind of introduce that.
Is it likely that the consulting firms that are bidding on this won't be from Maine and may not know much about Kennebunkport?
It's possible, but more than likely, what we'll see Maine consulting groups, that'll bid on this. Just because comp planning is, every state has some version of comp planning, but you really have to understand the state law in the process if you're going to get one that's going to pass. Doesn't mean that out of state, an out of state firm wouldn't, but I would expect that we'll see more Maine representation for this than out of state. But you never know. Okay, all right, so if everyone's good there.
Yep.
So I've got some notes for that. I'm gonna move on to the scope of work. So we have.
I like the emphasis on a lot of public input.
Yep. So one thing that was in the, the Lewiston plan, and I left some of it in here, but it's not, we don't necessarily tend to operate in a similar fashion, is that they engage the planning board a lot more within their process, and so I just, I would be looking for some feedback on what we think about more direct involvement with the planning board on this.
I think it's a good idea because they're the ones that handle the day-to-day changes. It's just been my experience that they have been so busy with meetings and just doing the day-to-day that it's hard to get them to actually get into the planning phase.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So, you know this, Barbara, but that's really how the growth planning committee was really established.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was because
Yeah.
there was too much on the planning board's
Yeah.
plate, and so that's why a separate committee was formed to just deal with the comp plan. In a lot of other communities, it's really the planning board that deals with the comp plan, and
right.
And then also, their other duties. So.
But it doesn't mean we can't, help the planning board, by
Yeah.
providing
Yeah.
the input for them to look at, so they don't have to create it.
Yeah, and I think for, so just, for purposes of the RFP, I think, do we want to keep emphasis of including the planning board in here as a board that's included as part of the process?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, definitely.
Okay, so this is broken down into a couple different categories. We have project meetings. We talked a little bit about meetings with GPC, town staff, planning board, and the selectmen. We're asking for regular updates. Public engagement and communication. Devote a fair amount of emphasis towards that piece of it. And then comprehensive plan development.
Hey, Werner,
Yes, sir.
back on the public engagement and communications.
Yep.
Are we expecting them to serve in a role where they would be the convener, the person who's moderating the discussion? Often these kinds of people have those skills. And if so, it would seem we should, as opposed to being an observer or a participant at a table, and as opposed to hiring another professional, can they do this?
Yeah, that's my expectation, that they would be the facilitator of these public engagement sessions. Yeah.
So I'm not sure I got that from reading this.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I can do that. I can add a clarifying sentence within that paragraph that they will facilitate those public
Yeah, that's the key word.
Yep. Okay. So comprehensive plan development, the consultant serves as a primary drafter of the plan, update research development materials, including but not limited to, and this. So I added a number of unique pieces in here that that we have that we would provide them. So it would be our existing comp plan, the recent housing needs assessment, village parcel master plan. I'm playing that out in terms of the timing of it, because I suspect, just looking at our timeline, that village parcel master plan, there should be, at the very least, there's a draft at that point, if not close to a final by the time this gets started. Mm-hmm. So we'll want to have that, that document and that plan included as one of our base pieces of information. And then, of course, all of our ordinances, codes, policies, demographics, and census info. Existing conditions, staff can provide all that information as far as what our capital facilities are, our land use, growth patterns, things of that nature. So this is just kind of a guideline of types of information that they would bring in, or that they would use.
One of the things that we talked about earlier was that we were going to not redo history and everything. So, something we should say about the historical side of things will not change that much, or can be carried forward but not reinvented.
Yep. Yeah, and that could be, we could add that into, as part of the comprehensive plan development. So so where at the end there I have highlighted in yellow, a couple of other things that I'm looking for. I think that's a good point in there, that, the previous comp plan should serve as a reference.
Yep.
Maybe say should serve as a reference and may be incorporated. Parts may be incorporated or something like that.
Correct, yeah. Okay. All right, and then within that, I also identified what type of format that we're looking for in terms of the plan. As we've been talking about, we want a format that's user-friendly in both electronic and a paper format, such as interactive PDFs and ebooks. And then, so also just for your reading enjoyment, you all should have a copy of the digital zoning codes article that APA put out. So we don't really need to get into it, but I thought it was a good, just for the committee, a good background document to understand what direction the world's headed. as it relates to formats for these types of documents. All right, so any other areas that we want to add into this particular bulleted point, this bulleted list here? So I have that we want the previous comp plan to serve as a reference, but also, and I'll figure out how to write this up, that, all the history doesn't need to be repeated. So we've got plenty of time to work on this as well. So as you take it, if there's any other pieces that we need to add in here, we can still work. We can still add some more. So the next category is project management and responsibilities. Identifies that growth planning committee is the oversight committee for this particular project. With the hopes that we wind up with a plan that the growth planning recommends to the planning board, board of selectmen, and the residents. And then it outlines what your all's role will be. I don't know if you want to add a little bit to that or not, but think about that in terms of the role of the growth planning committee. What what you see in here that you like, or what it is that you may want to add or take away. So in it, the town agrees to give them as much information as we have in order to help out. We're there also to provide some level of technical resource. So technical resources would be posting of the agendas and posting information on the website and those types of things. And then, so I think saw in the minutes there was some discussion as to whether or not we want to have the budget, include the budget in there or not. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. There's one school of thought that says you don't put the budget in. There's another one that says if you put it in, then you're going to get exactly that. I don't.
But it's not going to be any secret. If they really want to look for it, it's going to be pretty easy to find it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The reality of it is, I feel if there's not some sense of a budget in there, you may wind up getting proposals.
250,000.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, we spend a lot of time trying to pare something down.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's
particularly after we told them we're the wealthiest community in the state.
Right. And so then I also put together what the project schedule at least would look like, at least for the beginning part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Werner, was there reason not to put in the actual a proposed actual project schedule that, starting October 15th, going from there forward, so they know what's in our mind on that? To me, that's, are we talking a 1 year, a 90-day,
What kind of major end date do we have? Do we have one proposed?
So I would, for this project, I would be suggesting in November. So in an ideal world, it would. We have until our 2022 deadline. We could have this as a year, for all practical purposes. You could shoot for a November ballot. So November of 2020. To put it in front of the voters.
No, presidential election year? No.
No. So, or
everybody out.
I just think that I think that, doing a June, for 2020 is too early. It doesn't give enough time because you
no.
have to have that document really ready by February,
Yeah.
for all practical purposes for June. And so November 2020 would be the earliest for a vote. But yeah, a presidential election, that's a good point.
Yep.
So you could put it to 2021, shoot to have everything ready and discussed and ready to get voted on by July 2021. Not necessarily,
By when?
July 21.
yeah.
Why wouldn't you do it in the June 21 timeframe?
Why?
Why not, if November 2020 is no good because of presidential, why not wrap up the work by December or January and have it on the ballot in
June?
June,
Yeah,
in June?
that's what I was suggesting.
yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the following fall.
No. I'm sorry. I meant, June. I might have said July, but I meant
Yeah,
June 21.
Seems so far away.
Not
When we start working on it.
Not when
Yeah.
you start working on it, right?
Well, and again, the reality of it is that you have to have, for just to meet the calendar timeline, you have to have everything really ready by end of February, early March, in order to have it ready for, for that June ballot.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah, the only reason why I didn't, I didn't line up a whole project schedule here, first of all, I wanted to have some discussion about it, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
But I just wanted to get some feedback on an end date, and then if I've got an end date, then I can put in, our calendar, what we need from the town clerk side of it, and then work back from
Yeah,
that.
backfill it, yeah.
On the public input portion of it, I don't know if you're going to, as you back into this, provide for periods of when that might happen, but it would seem to me it would be best to include some non-middle of the winter when the population is the absolute lowest in town. To Mike's point, there is a significant, we'd have a much lower population in town if we didn't have a lot of retirees who have moved in, but often they're gone for a month or 2 or 3 in the winter, and then you have summer residents and summer taxpayers. So I would love for it to spread over a period where you try to get all those populations involved and not just get, people who are left around in January.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's, I think, you're looking at, public feedback, probably summer, fall 2020. Yep, during that time frame.
Yeah, and it could be stages of it.
Yeah,
Preliminary.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for input,
Yep.
yeah, at public hearings,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
But we moved the town meeting to June to accommodate them, and they still don't show.
But at least you accommodate it. So.
Unless there's something exciting on the agenda,
That's
then
true.
they show.
That's true.
Okay. All right. So I'll feed in the rest of the dates for the for the project schedule, and then see what everybody thinks from that, from what we come up with. And then, so the next part of it is this selection process. So this is somewhat of a unique piece. Not all RFPs have this type of a that have this much detail in it as far as the selection process goes. But you know, I like the idea, you know, of having a selection review committee. I would expect that we would have one regardless. I don't know how much detail we feel like that we have to get into in the RFP, but this was my first crack at what, you know, I thought that committee would look like. You know, that we would have selectmen representation, town manager, myself, and two representatives from growth planning.
I like the transparency of it. If there's ever a conflict between bidder number one and bidder number two, or somebody, if you've set out how you're going to do it and you stick to those rules, you're in much better shape and can publicly say what you did, as opposed to being open to favoritism or, you know, parochialism,
Yep.
etc.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then response to requests. I mean, some of that is just, you know, what I'd say is somewhat typical boilerplate
Yes.
in terms of,
Yeah.
you know, what we want to see for folks. You know, we want to know that we want to know that they've done comprehensive planning before.
Yep.
You know, we want to get, we want to get some references. So I do have on here a timeline. It says provide a timeline that shows estimated time of completion for the study. So, at the risk of being redundant, do we ask for their timeline, or do we provide, you know, or do we give them the expectation of what we think the timeline should be? I mean, I think it's fine to have our what we have as a goal for a timeline.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of, you know, what we're expecting
Well,
it to be.
it still might be important to ask them, based on what you've seen,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think the timeline should be?
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So I'll
I'd stay
leave
with
that in there.
I don't have, you know, so long as we give an end date that we expect it to go to voters in June of 2021, they're the experts. They can tell us and guide us how to get there best.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I would expect to hear from them as well if they think that's a realistic timeline.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, sitting here, we think that's realistic, but, you know, we might get some feedback that says that that's not, and so,
Yeah. An extra year.
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
And to your point, we do have to back it up, because to get it on the warrant, it may be for June, but it's got to be finished prior to that.
That's right. Yeah, it has to be finished a lot earlier than what we think. So, and in all fairness, if you do have somebody that's bidding from out of state, they may not realize that. You know, they may think, oh, we got to have this thing done by June, and think that they
Sure, the town council meets every week.
have
and
that
they vote on it.
right
Yeah.
exactly have that time. So, and then again, you know, a typical is where you get your price proposal winds up in a separate envelope. So you get to make the theory is you get to make a judgment call based on what they've presented, not necessarily based on the bottom line. So
Okay.
Okay.
so that's what I have.
Very good.
Now, they're going to adhere to a format that who puts it in a final format
I mean, as far as the actual
document?
I would expect a consultant to do that.
So do we need to provide them with what format we want? Do we have to decide that up front?
No.
So talk to me a little bit more about what you think that.
Well, you remember we were talking about really updating it to more of a graphic, photo-centric
Yep.
type of report rather than just words.
Yeah. You know, I think I like the idea of at least putting something, a little bit of a better description in the RFP that sets that expectation. Because I think, one, it depends, all right, does the consultant have somebody on staff that actually is
Proficient in doing that, yeah.
proficient in doing that, I think is an important piece.
You could even make reference to another one that we liked
Yep.
as a sort of like this.
Yeah.
Make it look like this.
Yeah, go home and make it happen.
Right.
Bring it back.
Couldn't you handle that though in the selection committee as you're going through with them, and the committee has samples and they will presented information to us and copies of their plans, and naturally you would have a discussion about what you like, what you don't like, why did they do this, who chose the style, have you seen better ones?
Sure, yeah, well,
That would be part of the selection process, I would think.
Yeah, I just think it's very different if somebody shows up expecting that they're going to do the whole thing in Word, as opposed to,
a
really
little bit more
having-
modern approach, yeah.
or having somebody who has some almost publishing experience.
So maybe that goes back to your early description where you talk about the output and being, capable of being used,
Digitally.
Right.
interactive PDFs, ebooks, all that.
Yep.
Provide digital editable, maybe in there we can
Yeah.
Yeah.
add something. A contemporary look.
I think that's maybe that's a good choice of words right there. More of a contemporary look.
Okay. All right. I'll play around with some descriptions and add them in and
Good choice of
get
words.
your
Paul.
feedback. Okay. All right. So if you'll have any other feedback or comments on it, you can please email them to me. I'll add them in. But what I'll do is I'll take the notes that I have from here and I'll update it and send you all a second draft. So.
All right, very good. Okay. Item number 4 on our agenda. We have an update on our distribution and publicizing of our community survey results. Paul has done a fabulous job putting this together. So we have an update on that. Ooh, I can see it here.
All right, Paul, so I've just, I have it on the screen, and I'm happy to, I'll walk through it if you want to give us give us kind of a description or a play-by-play if you want.
Can you hear me well enough
Yes.
to do that, or do you?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it, and I have it here on my screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll remember at the last meeting, I provided a Word document that was an attempt at a summary, something that Dan or somebody could present to the Board of Selectmen. And there were some comments, which I incorporated in, and then I put it into a PowerPoint. And Dan had some comments. Did everybody look at Dan's? Did everybody open PowerPoint and look at Dan's comments, or were people not able to do that?
So what I brought, Paul, is I brought I think this is the revised PowerPoint. So I think what it was is that you incorporated into this particular version Dan's suggestions.
Right. Yeah, this has no comments in it.
Correct.
I revised the original one.
Yeah.
So I guess, from my perspective, I'm looking for, comments and feedback. Slide 1 is just pictures I stole off the internet. Slide 2 is the background, which is not really changed since last time. I did some wordsmithing just to make it cleaner. Slide 3 was a big long narrative, and Dan suggested a chart, or Dan suggested a better format. So this is what I came up with. I guess the only change he had said, I think his comment was just illustrate the top 2 or 3. And my perspective was, we asked, the specific question was, rank these from 1 to 10. What was the most important? And I thought it was kind of important to show that, senior citizen housing was like at 5% versus this environment one, which was almost at 55. I don't have the exact numbers here because of the way the chart came out. So anyway, it shows the whole range from all the items we gave to choose from that we asked them to prioritize. And the chart just reflects all the number 1 votes. Dan's comment on this one just was just to change the description on the right side, that it was equal to or greater than important. So the numbers represent important and strongly. The strongly and agree and strongly agree, both categories.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like that particular slide. I think it's good to, it shows, where...
And it's interesting, what it means and why people felt more strongly now than then, who knows, about virtually all of them. Some by more, some by less. On this next slide, he suggested just listing the top 10, the items that scored 1 through 10, combining the agree and strongly agree numbers. So I had put them on the last format. I had just ordered them by the strongly agreed, and he suggested we do it by both. So I've combined them, and this reflects from 1 through 10. Is that clear enough to show that number 1 is the highest? I don't really. Top 10, number 1. Yeah, I guess it does. Is it clear to you guys?
Yep.
Yep.
Somehow I've lost the heading here on this next one. I forget what the little intro was. Werner, did you print out the last one, Werner?
Is that the one that talks about regulation of short-term rentals?
Well, but I think the heading has fallen off. There was a heading that was a prelude to the next 4 slides, A, B, C, and D, and it's gone.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't have that one, but I.
And anyway, it needs a heading so there's context for what these.
A, B, C.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I think the heading said something like, and this was the comment that Abby had made, because there was such a strong I don't agree or disagree. I had characterized it one way, like there was little interest in these things, and her comment was, well, when you see how high the neither agree nor disagree, it's really ambiguous what this information means. So I think the heading that I intended to put in here was something like complex. I'll see if I can find it before we get off. I have to go look at another document.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, I mean, if there was a slide that was right before this particular group that would introduce this group of, what do we have, group of 4?
Yeah, so all of these, there was no consensus one way or the other, really, on these next 4. Short-term rentals, where to locate development, affordable housing, and senior housing. There was, not strong either way. It was kind of, not really strong feelings and no consensus. And then, what did I? Here, let me go back.
And there's the next one.
While you're looking, I'll go back and see if I can find. Oh, the heading I had that I lost was less certainty on other issues.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then there were 4 sub. And then I thought we should include, since there were so many comments and suggestions, the first question is, are my 9 slides representative enough of the data to give a presentation? Did I miss something? Dan had, by changing around chart, the top 10 initiatives, there were some survey questions that weren't really included that were in the intro, but now they're in there. So I think it is more representative of the entire survey.
Yeah.
I would expect that giving the presentation to the board or selectmen, we'd give them Abby's whole report as a handout, so they can see everything themselves and see the data.
Yeah.
This is just a summary. So on the comments, I took 36 and 37, question 36 and 37, and tried to pick out a representative sample. Obviously, 36, you're asking people to be critical about the town, and 37 is, what do you like about the town?
I don't know if you could do it, but they're very busy slides, these last 2.
Okay.
And sometimes if you, instead of just kind of listing them and having a bunch of words, maybe you could kind of box them and put them in all different kind of directions and poses and things like that. So they're not looking like, oh, the one thing you would change, the top one is shorten the tourist season. So you don't want to, is that the conclusion we want, is that we want to shorten the tourist season? That's the number 1 thing we'd like to change.
There you go.
Rather than just kind of have them scattered.
Yep. Yeah, because
all over the page.
There is no rank ordering of these, of course.
Right, so I'm thinking maybe if you could scatter them a little bit rather than having them just listed.
Okay. I can play with that, or if somebody...
You might be able to read it easier if it was a little bit darker print in those boxes or something.
Yep.
Snow in July.
That would look good. I think that would look really good. And, I think that's what you need to say, though, just what you said.
So if you haven't read the 800 individual responses, which I hadn't, frankly, until I did this, it is worth, in a half hour you can go through them. it is worth going through them,
Yes.
This is the entire survey.
just for your own benefit. And if you do that and have other suggestions, or say, you know, you missed the whole thing about whatever, let me know.
Okay. That's a lot, you put a lot of work into that, that's a really great job, as far as I'm concerned.
So the last slide that you have there, where we talk about next steps, were you looking for suggestions from folks on what to put into that?
Yeah, I thought, you know, for the sake of the Board of Selectmen as well as people watching on television, that we should put this in context of what we just discussed, which is the comprehensive plan development. So somehow to wrap this into that,
Right.
that this information goes from here. There's going to be more public, you know, more public meetings. There's going to, you know, somehow to lay this out so that they see what the purpose of this was, why we did the survey, which I tried to do in the background, but just as a closer. So I was open for suggestions.
I think, you know, having it as input to the comprehensive plan is probably the most appropriate thing. There's a lot of very good public information here that certainly, you know, obviously you have a lot of opinion, and it's not so much like if you were going to take the changes, you had over 400 suggestions for changes. Obviously, not all of those are going to be in here, but you took the essence of kind of the ones that were spoken about the most, and those kind of things should be talked about, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, just the one line that this just prompted me to write was that this becomes an important piece of data for informing the next comprehensive plan. You know, I think.
Yep.
You know,
That's
I think that would be a good, you know, statement to have in your next, you know, in the next steps piece, and then along with anything else that you know, that we may think is appropriate.
Yeah, real nice job on this. Thank you for doing it.
You're welcome.
Any other input on this? Paul, thanks again.
So, so just in terms of timing, I think, you know, the idea is that this gets presented to the Board of Selectmen at one of their meetings. What I would like to suggest is that, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit in terms of schedule. So it sounds like there's maybe some minor tweaks and changes that want to happen to this. We should maybe have you know, a meeting in May where we talk about those, and then maybe shoot for the selectmen's second meeting in May to do the presentation.
Yeah. They'll be through the budget process by then.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's what we discussed.
Yep. Okay.
I assume Dan would be doing the presentation, so maybe we're going to check with him on his schedule for.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I'll touch base with him on dates.
Okay. This was no comment from the audience. So.
No, no, yeah. Mum's the word.
Get so quiet in here. Okay, do we have any other business to discuss tonight?
I
All
have
right.
none.
So just looking at schedule-wise, what we would be looking at. All right, so it looks like our first meeting
The 7th.
in May would be the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
That works.
And then I believe what we would be looking at for selectmen, they're on a 2nd and 4th schedule. So that would be the 23rd.
Third.
What date were we doing for our next meeting? Sorry, I missed it.
May 7th.
7th for our next meeting, our May meeting. And the 23rd for the selectmen presentation.
All right, and then I'll send an email to Dan, and then I'll also confirm that that works for Lori, for the selectmen.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so that's all I have.
That's
So
all
we'll
you
have, so I'll have an updated draft RFP for you, and then we'll have also updated slide presentation, and then we'll know for sure beforehand if those dates will work.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to
So moved.
Second.
and second. All those in favor?
Bye.
Okay, we're
Good night,
complete.
thanks.
Thank you all and have a pleasant evening.